One thing that wrestling fans love to do is debate things. The best match of all time, the worst match of all time, the best promotion, the worst promotion, the best era for wrestling, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the territory days, the 90s, the Attitude Era, ECW, WCW, WWE, the Ruthless Aggression Era, so many eras, 90s All Japan, 90s New Japan. There are so many rich topics for wrestling fans to dive into, but one thing tends to dominate the discussion. Who's the greatest heel of all time? The greatest heel turn, the greatest heels, the most dastardly villains that we could ever hope to talk about, that we could ever hope to just revile and want to see get their comeuppance. Like, how dare you say that about us? We want to see you get beat by our hero. Well, fortunately, WWE and Peacock have teamed up with an 8-episode series to discuss this very topic. I'm John Retton with my review of WWE Evil Episode 1, Hollywood Hulk Hogan. And in my opinion, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, the best heel turn of all time. Argue with your mamas, your papas, all the leaves are brown and the skies are gray. Wait, that's the mamas and the papas. But anyway, enough 60s song references. I doubt anybody actually goddamn knows or watches this channel. Let's talk about this episode. They did just decide to dump all 8 episodes right on the cock. 8 episodes worth on the cock. That's going to be a lot of cock content to get through. Cock tent actually could have been something right there, but that sounds more like something you would go to if you decided to pitch your tent elsewhere with some different type of camping. But anyway, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, in my opinion, best heel turn of all time. One thing, I was 15 years old when the heel turn happened, and my fucking goodness, the amount of trash, all the stuff. I remember watching that pay-per-view live at a friend's house, and it was astonishing to see the amount of trash. Hulk Hogan literally cutting the promo of his career and his life. It was absolutely amazing to see a guy that I had grown tired of a few years prior and had gotten a new lease on life in WCW, basically getting booed out of the motherfucking building. And watching this episode, well, a few things popped up. One, there were a few interesting little tidbits from Eric Bischoff and a couple other people. Of course, there was Peter Rosenberg and David Shoemaker, that goddamn idiot. And a few other talking heads that really had no business being there, though you had to have fans of Hulk Hogan, because you can't find a lot of people to really say good things about Hulk Hogan. Well, because of the racism and other stuff and everything. The fact Randy Savage is always better than him, and, oh yeah, the racism stuff that he never really apologized for. But that being said, you can't argue that Hulk Hogan was one of the biggest box office attractions and one of the biggest influences on wrestling for many, many, many years, for good, bad, or indifferent. Hulk Hogan, big fucking deal. There is a reason why Arn Anderson was quoted, among other things, and among other people saying, if people don't know anything about wrestling, they say, oh, that's that thing Hulk Hogan does. They know that. Now, every single one of these episodes is between 45 and like 50 minutes. I'll be reviewing these gradually, because since they dumped them all and we're almost at WrestleMania season, if I don't get to all of them before WrestleMania, I apologize. So, since this is from WWE and the cock, Peacock decided to basically just, go with the Dark Side of the Ring presentation. Seriously, take a look at how they did some of the reenactment stuff. It's like they took a look at what Evan and Jason did and said, we're going to do this, only we're going to do it a little bit lazier. That being said, there were some good parts to this. And I'm just talking about the presentation of that. I'm not talking about this particular topic. John Cena, as the narrator, he was fine, I guess. I mean, Cena has a good voice. He just seemed like he was just reading off of stuff. Granted, I have notes, but still, I'm just a fan doing a, wrestling YouTube channel. This was a big goddamn production. Cena was just like, I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this. Vince, stop holding that gun to my head. You can't see me anyway. But back to the 80s, a simpler time. We go January 23rd, 1984, where Hulkamania was born, ignoring the fact it happened in the AWA, but it is what it is. Only 45 minutes they could talk about this thing. Bruce Pritchard, David Shoemaker, talk about, we need real-life superheroes. And it was simpler times as far as, like storylines and everything. Evil Foreign Menace, Hulk Hogan, All-American Hero. America, fuck yeah. Jimmy Hart was talking about the red and yellow. Well, why would you want to wear the red and yellow? Or why should I wear the red and yellow? Hulk says, McDonald's. Jimmy Hart, by the way, looks exactly the same as he did. I mean, yes, obviously a little bit of age, but still has the same energy. And he's, 80? It's astonishing seeing how well Jimmy Hart has aged. And one of my favorite managers of all time. Mario Lopez talks about Hulk Hogan's influence on various young people and everything. And then they couldn't let him talk too long because he was Saved by the Bell. Rocky III, the Cold War stuff. They ignore the fact, by the way, that the Cold War by sometime in like the early to mid 80s was basically fucking over. I mean, I'm not saying that there wasn't a threat, but it's like, oh, the Cold War, all this. It kind of was over by that point, and we did have Nikolai Volkov. We had Ivan Koloff, Nikita Koloff, and Crusher Khrushchev, who would go on to be Demolition Smash in WWE, and you had a bunch of foreign, Russian menaces. But the whole point is the Cold War was really kind of passe by the time, they started talking about Hulkamania exploding and all that. Again, it is what it is. They did do a lot of revisionist history during this stuff. The 90s were a time of, counterculture and everything. That Hogan was an all-American hero in the 80s. They did, however, gloss over the fact that he got booed heavily at Mania 5. I just retro-reviewed that, and you can check that out after this. But he did get booed very heavily. And it wasn't as noticeable as was at the 1992 Rumble, but people wanted Randy Savage to win. They were getting tired of Hogan, even though, and again, Hogan, big box office attraction, huge reason why WWE was so successful. Even though I say Randy Savage should have had a longer run, you can't argue with Hogan's success. And Jimmy said that he checked the merch sales and they started to go down. Hulk decided he's going to step away and go to Hollywood. He was doing the movies. They ignored No Holds Barred, which everybody should. It was a pile of dookie. And then by 1994, he said he wasn't making any money. He was doing shots in Japan in 1993, and I don't think they were paying him peanuts. Yes, he did Suburban Commando, Mr. Nanny. He was doing Thunder in Paradise, which I can't imagine was necessarily a ratings grab. I think it only did 2 seasons, and it was kind of absolutely shit. But because it shot in Florida, Disney MGM Studios, Eric Bischoff had taken over WCW, was shooting WCW Saturday Night. Nitro hadn't come along yet, and was doing the Disney MGM deal. And, Hulk said, not making any money, and I just don't believe. I'm not saying he was making, like, tons and tons of money, but, that Vince let him out of his contract because Vince felt that he had reached his zenith in that environment he had. Hogan also neglected to mention, oh yeah, he won the title of Mania 9 and then just threw it down, or threw it down in a verbal sense and basically said the IWGP Heavyweight Championship was better and, a prestigious championship. While he was a champion still for that 2-month period, I think he fought the Great Muta during that time. I think that's where that gif has come from, of Muta just clotheslining Hogan, like, from the stage and everything, and just doing that stuff because Muta was just that goddamn good and still had knees that weren't replaced. But yeah, Thunder in Paradise, how Bischoff, became executive vice president, and that he needed to lure a bunch of Vince's guys to jumpstart the company. Bischoff has said that he was already making some concession, or, cutting some costs and everything, and getting to the point where they were co-promoting with Disney MGM Studios, and sure, talents didn't love it, but they were cutting costs. They were doing what Bill Watts did without being a goddamn prick, and I love Bill Watts for his influence on wrestling, do not misunderstand, but him in 1992 WCW, easy for me to say, was not very good. Bischoff said that he wanted to bring awareness to WCW and signed Hulk, and it was like $2 million a year, and it was a big merch cut, big pay-per-view cut, limited number of dates and everything. I mean, and at that time they were syndicating. Well, they were doing WCW Saturday Night, but it was in syndication. It was taped in gluts and everything. And this is during the very infancy of the internet, so results weren't really leaking out. And if you wanted to see the results, you had to make sure your parents weren't on the telephone, or call a hotline and everything, because Mean Gene Okerlund was part of the company. And, okay, so that's Bash at the Beach 1994. He beats Flair, wins the title, and then a year and a half later, well, things are starting to change. They blew over the fact that boos were actually starting to happen in February of 1995 when he was facing off against Vader, and I remember that. They were really bad by mid and late 1995. They talk about Hogan embracing the dark side. Okay. I'm going to say right now, the dark side part, they blew over the Dungeon of Doom thing where he was actually dressing all in black and everything, and that was a precursor. It was him turning to the dark side. He had a Zorro mask and a sword for some odd reason. I think it was October 1995. I forget the episode. I know I reviewed it, but I don't remember the date. Bischoff pitched the heel turn. Hulk said no, because he didn't want to hurt his merch sales, but already... It's not that Hogan wasn't popular. He was still popular among kids, but people that grew up on Hogan, myself included, were getting sick of the goody two-shoes thing. Goody, 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 goody two-shoes, brother. We were getting sick of that. Don't drink, don't smoke, take your vitamins. And provided that I haven't ruined that song completely for you guys, if anybody knows what the fuck I'm talking about, let's talk about Plan B was going to be, well, Nash and Hall. Well, Hall, then Nash, the late, great Scott Hall. He showed up. You people, you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. Nash shows up in the third man storyline. But the thing is, Bischoff admitted he didn't have a third guy. Hogan messaged him at one point. I think he was shooting a movie, and he was out in Hollywood or out in L.A., and flew him out, and basically the third guy was going to be Sting. Well, you can't ask Sting because Hogan didn't want to leave the money on the table, which can you blame him? His merch sales were dipping, even though they were probably doing pretty well still, all things considered, but he wanted a piece of that pie. Can't blame him. And then we go to Bash at the Beach 1996. He wanted to be the best bad guy ever, and whose side is he on? Heenan's saying that Rosenberg, Walt Disney's least favorite broadcaster, not named Sam Roberts, decided to, say, well, what do you mean? There's only one side he could be on. But then he drops the leg, and the place blew because kids were crying, guys were upset. There was a drunk guy trying to get in the ring. Kevin Nash should have stomped his head like a goddamn grape because that's what that stupid little fuck deserved. And he wasn't little. I mean, it was like watching a hot air balloon like deflated trying to get in the ring. But he did that with all the trash in the ring, the promo of his life. It's like, Mean Gene, the first thing you need to do is tell these people to shut up if you want to hear what I got to say. This right here is the future of wrestling. You can call this the new world order of wrestling, brother. And all this trash, all this crap in the ring represents these fans out here. For 2 years, I bled. I gave my blood, sweat, and tears, all that stuff and everything. You fans can stick it, just all that. And the Monsters with him, they reigned and they ruled. Initial NWO was a huge success, a massive success. I eventually had to get a WWE version of the shirt. I actually had the WCW version, but it got worn and torn and was a softer material than this, but I digress. DDP talked about how Turner got tons of calls. Kids were upset. Adults were upset. People were wanting to riot. People were pissed. Like, go back and look at that crowd reaction. I think the full match is on YouTube. It is on the Cock Bash at the Beach 1996, which I retro-review is actually a terrific pay-per-view. But it's a big goddamn deal. Like, Bischoff knew they hit on something. And Shawn Michaels chimed in, keeping one eye on Hulk Hogan and then one eye on his title reign. I'll let you figure out which one that is. But just, the stuff boosted, the ratings boosted. I mean, it was huge. WCW was already in the midst of about a 4 week winning streak. Or somewhere around that, because actually, now that I think about it, it might have been 3 weeks, because WWE last won a ratings victory on June 10th, 1996, which oddly was the time, or the same episode where Nash showed up, and the very last Raw and Nitro before Great American Bash 1996, where Hall and Nash showed up. They had to reveal that they actually were working for WCW because of the whole lawsuit thing, because Vince is a petty little bitch, and NWO took off. They got cheered wildly as bad guys. Like, the ratings took off. Why was Dr. Phil there is my question. I will take Dr. Phil over Dr. Oz, but both are goddamn idiots and should never be heard by anybody with reasonable, amount of, attached brainstem. Who the hell is Zombie Juice of Flat Juice Zombies? Apparently he's a rapper. I don't know who some of these particular talking heads were. But it became too much for WCW. They glossed over a whole lot of stuff. Like, they got to where they were about 15 football leagues worth of people. I mean, actually, I think it was only 40, but seriously, it was a bunch of limos of guys and everything, all the way down to Vincent, and nothing against Mike Rotunda, but at that point, Mike Rotunda being a member of the NWO wasn't exactly a great thing. They had Buff Bagwell, that gave him personality, which Buff really only had personality. He didn't really have wrestling ability. And of course, he got creative control because Hogan, when he signed with WCW, didn't trust anybody there. I think he trusted Flair, but that was about it. He didn't trust him. He didn't know Bischoff, didn't know whatever. He said, it doesn't work for me, brother. And he would just always get to where things were getting out of control. Egos were out of control. Bischoff was fired in September 1999. They brought in Vince Russo. And I'm just going to say right now, I despise Vince Russo with every fiber of my being. I do. I can't stand the guy. If that guy burst into flames in front of his family, I would laugh. because it's what he fucking deserves for what he did to the wrestling business. Oh, it's just wrestling, bro. Get over it. Nah, it was something that people were passionate about, and Russo just basically pissed on it. He may claim that he's a wrestling fan, but he was not a very good writer. He was not a very good creative guy, and Vince McMahon was able to take the ideas of Russo and make them presentable. So, he was going to fire everyone that was 40 and a day over 40. And he felt he had a target on his back and that Flair and Hogan couldn't go on forever, which is true. That is true. But trying to create new isn't the worst thing in the world. But you also can't get rid of everybody that has these guaranteed contracts and just send them home. Yeah, Russo wasn't going to turn the goddamn company around. The ratings went up a little bit, but they weren't going to get back to when they were at, like, 5s and 6s and stuff like that. Even doing that where he was there till about, the Starrcade 99 or something like that, it was somewhere around that, he wasn't going to be able to turn it around right away. And also, you had the AOL Time Warner merger that started in January of 2000. You had all these other bosses. So it was a whirlwind of bullshit. But they focused more on the end of WCW than they did on Hogan being a heel. I did like how Bischoff had one line. Vince Russo has never butted heads with anyone to their face. It's always behind their back. Don't edit that out. I dare you. Bischoff does not like Russo. I don't blame him because Vince Russo's a piece of shit. That always was a piece of shit and always will be a piece of shit. Then Bash at the Beach 2000. How Russo was a mastermind. He came up with all these scenarios, but wanted Jarrett to have the belt and not Hogan. But Hogan wanted the belt. Bischoff talked about this stuff where they were going to, have Hogan as champion, but he was going to walk out, and then they were going to come back with when there was a new champion, Hogan and this guy were going to meet, and that was going to be for the belt. But then Hogan was never seen again. We get a lawsuit. WCW closes down, is sold to Vince. 2009 clip of Vince where he says, "Oh yeah, Vince, you crushed him. I didn't take any satisfaction." Yeah, you fucking did, Vince. Of course you fucking did. And I don't blame him. History can be written by the victors. Hey, Victor, heard about your dad. Nobody gets that. Nobody gets that goddamn line. WCW went off the air and everything. They skipped over the invasion angle. I retro-reviewed that. Boy, was it something. And they talk about Rock versus Hogan. Oh, it's going to be the proverbial passing of the torch and everything. Rock is just about to break into the stratosphere. Rock was already doing Hollywood stuff. He was going to be doing media stuff for the Scorpion King shortly after Mania 18. This is Hogan's last great match. And Rock was already on SNL in 2000, had a cameo in The Mummy Returns, was doing a bunch of other stuff, media appearances, would be out into Hollywood by just a couple years after that. He would be done full-time after SummerSlam 2002, and then would be back for a little brief appearance, face Hogan at, No Way Out 2003, and face Austin at Mania 19, face Goldberg at Backlash 2003, and then would only make one more wrestling in-ring appearance until Survivor Series 2011. He'd make sporadic, he inducted his piece of shit dad, Rocky Johnson. Fuck Rocky Johnson, I'm glad he's dead, by the way. And he would do all that. So the whole point is they were acting like, oh, Hogan did the greatest thing and did this for The Rock. Rock was already going to be there. I'm not saying he didn't need the match with Hogan, and the match was great. From a crowd reaction standpoint, as far as in-ring work, it wasn't necessarily great, but, the crowd was split. There were some cheers for The Rock, but it was like 99.9% for Hogan, because Canada, they wanted to see the crowd, or they wanted to see Hogan Hulk up. He does. And Vince then says after the Hulk, it's like, go get your red and yellow gear. Hollywood Hulk Hogan gave him a new lease on life. He shows up with the red and yellow gear April 4, 2002, and then we all have a little bit of Hollywood in all of us, and it was genuine betrayal and all this, and it is arguably the greatest heel turn of all time. Boy, there was some revisionist history in this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.